It's Labor Day weekend and time for the final New York Sports Rapid Rundown episode for the month of August. And just like that, summer is unofficially over. But football returns this week starting on Thursday. We're in the final stretch of the MLB and WNBA season, so sports never stops. Neither does the conversation on this show, where we discuss the three hottest topics in New York sports. My guest this week is a talented journalist who covers the Brooklyn Nets for Nets Republic and Nets Daily. He also covers the New York Liberty for the local W. Now, he's dope because, like myself, he's an alum of the great Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn. Welcome to the show, a fellow Brooklynite and Bartonite, the one and only Brian Fleurantin. What's going on, man?
I feel great. It's great to be here. Always good to have Barton alums in the house.
Yes.
Good time coming.
It definitely is. You are the second Barton alum to sit at this desk. I had a fellow classmate, a former classmate of mine, say here for something else. It's always good to have a Bartonite here. And if you don't know about the greatness of Clara Barton, well, now you do. How are you doing? How's your summer going? How's everything been?
Summer's been great. I got back in the country a couple weeks ago from a 2-week stay in Europe. Did 1 week in England, a couple of days in Florence, Italy, and then wrapped up in Rome. I will say, if you do travel, bring a lot of water. It's hot, hot. Like, I've never sweated and had that much water in my life in one sitting. Like, I would get the really large bottles and, like, drink them up. Make sure I'm hydrated, feeling good, but it was amazing.
Yeah, you were telling about the trip. You were living good despite being hot. You were eating well. That sounded all really good. I'm glad your summer's going well. I can't believe the summer is practically over. Yeah, it makes me sad. It makes me sad too. But let's try to stay positive and happy and talk about a lot that's going on this week, because we've got a lot to talk about this week, guys, with Brian, including the Liberty. They are eyeing the playoffs with 7 games left in the W season. The Mets are set to play meaningful September games. But first, Brian, we have to talk about the New York Yankees.
Yep.
Here we go, starting with some baseball. So, Brian, the Yankees, they started this 2024 season 50-24. Really good start, right? But since then, they've been 29-34. And at times, we've seen the Bronx Bombers play down to their competition, play up to some of the tougher teams, but down to the lesser teams. Earlier this week, we saw this. They dropped the series to the Nationals. The team has been what I like to call mediocre, or, so like I like to say sometimes, extra regular. I'll say that about them, right? Since that dominant start. So now we're in the final full month of the season. Do you believe the team can get out of this mediocre muck? Do you believe that can happen?
I think for them, they have, right, because right now they're up a game and a half on Baltimore, and they have the tiebreak. I think they have 3 games over the Guardians, plus they have the tiebreaker. So that gives them a little bit of a cushion to work with, and I feel like that gives them at least a little bit of leeway. It's almost like you're in like a crowded area, but you have just enough room to move your arms around.
Right.
So I like that for them. And I think that their schedule is going to be pretty tough. But I think what helps also is that a lot of those games are going to be at home. Like they have a 3-game series against Baltimore from the 24th to the 26th, and it's going to be in Yankee Stadium. And I think to really give themselves as much room as possible, I think they got to sweep all 3 of those games. Like, they're down in the season series currently to Baltimore, and then if they win that, they have the tiebreaker over Baltimore in Cleveland. And I think especially for this team, if you're able to stack those wins up, really get back on in good footing, you get to have home field throughout the playoffs. And I think, you know, we talk about it in a lot of sports.
Yeah.
Role players always play better at home, and when you're at home, you feel a lot more comfortable. Just as one example, Giancarlo Stanton, I was looking it up last night. At Yankee Stadium, he's slugging .568, and on the road, he's slugging .387. So for players like that, if you get as many games in your building as possible, you really get to be your full, most comfortable self. And like we were talking about before, when you have that advantage, you have a little bit more time and rest to really sort of like set your rotations, have players to like rest up any sort of nicks and bruises that they're going through. So I think for the Yankees, getting home court later.
You think about basketball.
Getting home field advantage, I think, is really of the utmost importance, and I like their chances. And last night, they got a good win against St. Louis. Stroh gave them some really good innings. Austin Wells had an awesome game at the plate. I like what they're going to do, and I think because coming up, they're going to Texas after the series wraps up against St. Louis. Texas hasn't been hitting well this year. They're 24th in OPS, and you have Rodon, and Garrett Cole pitching in that series. Cole, he hasn't crossed 7 innings yet this season, but he's gone 6 a couple times in August. He's really started to sort of like figure some things out, I would say, to a certain degree. So they're going to need really big work out of him and everyone else to sort of really make that big final push to secure a top spot.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see if they can make that final push. But now is the time. You really talked about looking at the end of the month with that series against the Orioles. That looms to be large. But I think what Yankee fans are hoping for is, can they get some separation before that? And that means taking care of business against teams that you should. So Brian kind of mentioned this here, guys, because starting with Friday's game against the Cardinals, the Yanks, they've got the 10th toughest schedule, the 3rd hardest in the American League the rest of the way. So it's not going to be easy. Those stats are according to Thankathon.com. Now, the Orioles, that's their main competition. They've got the 3rd softest schedule between now and the end of the regular season, Brian. So the top 2 records in the American League will get a bye to start the postseason. Part of what you're talking about in the importance of just being in your own bed, playing on your own home field. So how imperative is it, despite the 10th toughest schedule in the league, that the Bronx Bombers win this division? I take it as important because you want them to have home court field advantage, but winning the division, getting a bye, also gets you a little bit of rest, which can be helpful too.
Yep, I would say job one. Like job one for September and the end of the season, get home field. Like everything, push towards that. Because once you get that, you really allow yourself to set the table as much as possible. You don't want to have a situation like the 2022 Mets where you win 103 games, but you don't win the division. So you're hosting San Diego for a wild card series, and then we got one hit in game 3 and everyone's miserable and a great season's just down the tube. So you really want to avoid as many sort of like danger zones as best as you can, and that comes with winning the division, securing that best record in the league, and really being able to establish yourself in that way.
Let me ask you something to that, because there's sort of a counterpoint that's been going around in baseball. When you look at the last couple of seasons where there's been some wild card teams, we've seen some wild card teams make runs to the World Series. So some people may say, well, it's better to be a wild card team. I personally don't agree with that notion. I'm like, look, you want to stay in your home bed, you want to get these extra games at home, and that little break, I do think, is good to reset.
Yeah, I think that if you have the option to make your road easier, you always go for it.
Yes.
Like, we can win on the road, do you want to have to win on the road? Nah. That way, I can go for the road for all playoffs, but if I have home field advantage, I know that when the series comes down to it, it's in my house, and I can really do what I need to do that way. So if I'm able to get that opportunity, why not go for it? Why not really give yourself that chance to really enjoy the time off and really sort of like enjoy the rewards of a successful season? It's really hard to win a division, especially with a team as good as Baltimore. They have so much good young talent and the team and coming down the pipeline. So you really want to have that success to be like, okay, I won the division. Now I'm going into the playoffs. I've got a bye. Now I'm fully ready to go. I have the MVP. He may not get the Triple Crown, but he's right on the edge on the batting average side. Like, you want to really have as much opportunity as possible. Like, you get, hey, Juan Soto, you have a week off. Walk around New York. Enjoy being in the Bronx a little bit more. That way, when the winter comes, sign with us, we're all happy. Like, you want to do these things, and you really want to make sure that you can control the board as much as possible. I think that when you're able to sort of control how things go when it comes to like postseason play, your life is a lot easier.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. I agree. I think you want the easiest path possible. Look, is it always guaranteed? No, the fans know that out there, but I do think rest is good. And getting yourself right, I think that can help, and the Yankees can use that. We'll see how things work out for the Yankees moving forward. Okay, keeping it in baseball and moving over to the Mets. The Amazins, they just what was that sigh about?
The Mets are near and dear to my heart.
Oh, okay. I was like, there's a little bit of pain there, so I had to make sure I understood what I heard it in the sigh. Okay, I understand. I grew up a Mets fan. I understand exactly what that sigh meant to Brian. Totally right there. No. I'm glad you let it out. We want to be our authentic selves on this show, and I'm glad you were able to let that out. So, you got the sigh out the way. The Amazins, they just completed a 10-game stretch, right, where they played the Orioles, who you just talked about being a good team with young talent. They also the Padres, the Diamondbacks. They went 6-4 in that stretch. I think most Mets fans, I hope so, would have signed up for that. But now, they've got themselves a big September. That's going to determine whether or not they will make the playoffs. They play 6 of their next 9 games against the White Sox. They started a series with them on Friday, and they also have the Reds in that span. How important is it that the Mets take care of business with teams that are below 500 or around, so we don't hear another sigh like that from you?
Yeah, I think for the Mets, for those upcoming 6 games, I want to say get all 6, but I know the Mets too well. They're going to trick a game off because that's what they do. So give me 5-1. I need 5-1 out of those 6 games. Like the SNY Mets Twitter account had a really great post about maybe like a week ago where the Mets had leads late in the games and then they lost all 5 in August. Like things like that, when you're right there, you gotta lock it down. Like you have to get these wins, and you really, especially against teams that are at the bottom of the league and really are just looking forward to the offseason. You gotta wrap it up. Like you can't afford to have any lapses. You can't afford to have bad bullpen moments. You gotta really make sure that you handle what you're supposed to do. So I want 5-1 out of them. Like their schedule's going to be a little bit tough. They have some big games coming down the line, and they're going to need help. And I think what might help them is that teams like Arizona and San Diego, who are ahead of them, they face up at the end of the season. So you might have a little bit of process of elimination there as they battle it out. Like they both have series against the Dodgers coming up, and Arizona has one right now. So you're hoping that you get that help. Atlanta is directly ahead of them in the standings, and then they go into Atlanta. It's not the old Turner Field House of Horrors, but it's still a House of Horrors nonetheless. On September 24th, 26th. So I'm like, God, just get me 2 games in Atlanta, and I won't complain for like 3 days.
Except getting 2 games in Atlanta has not always been easy, right? The Mets fan knows, and I hear the sigh there. I want to move to this because you talked about the team blowing games, right? And the 5 that they blew with leads late in August. Now, early this week, and I'm sorry to bring up tough memories, tough conversations for the Mets fans, but Edwin Diaz blew his 6th save of the season, right? Let's just keep it real. The Mets pen has been shaky.
Yeah.
It's been shaky this season. So, here's the thing. With all that's been going on, do you trust the Mets pen to get the job done down the stretch? You just talked about 5 games blown in August. Do you trust the Mets pen to get the job done down the stretch? Especially they got to go down to the ATL, try to lock down some games. Do you trust this bullpen right now?
I feel like it's a situation where it's like your partner asks you, should I do this thing? And I'm like, yes. You always say yes. Like you never want to like have that doubt, because when you have that doubt, it sort of seeps into everything you're doing. And I think for me, I gotta trust him by default. Like I have my trepidations. It's like for Edwin in particular, the eye test matches the numbers. He's been hit a lot harder this year. Fewer strikeouts, more fly balls. It's been really hard, and I think especially coming off as severe injury as he had in 2023, you really sort of see the struggles play out. But I think for him, like he had a clean inning last night. He bounced back from the blown save in Arizona the Wednesday night, the Grand Slam. He had a good inning the next day. So I think for him, being able to sort of like bounce back from that immediately in the way that he has, I think is a good sign for him. And I trust that he has enough sort of like wherewithal, and he has enough like gas in him to really power through for this month. So my default with the Mets is hope for the best, and then when everything else happens, it just happens. So I'm like, okay, I got you. I believe in you. Let's make it happen.
When everything else just happens, it happens. That is not the most encouraging words for the Mets fan at all, right there. It's like hope for the best, and when everything else happens, it happens.
Yeah, life be lifing with the Mets, man. Let me tell you,
man. A lot of Mets fans are going to watch that, hear that, and they will agree. You know what? Let's hope for the best. And here's the thing, Brian, because the Mets are near and dear to your heart. I think that being realistic at the beginning of the season, if I had said to you, hey, the Mets are going to be able to play meaningful games at the start of September, I think you would have signed up for that, right?
Yeah.
So here we are. It sounds like you're going to try to enjoy the ride.
Yeah. Like when I hear meaningful games in September, I think back to previous ownership and that being their goal. So I'm like, oh, we're here. We're at the minimum standard that you want. Now that we're here, we're close. Let's make it happen. I think especially when a team is close in the way that the Mets are, you really want to just like turn your brain off in a sense. So I do that a lot where I'm like, okay, we're close enough. Anything can happen in a particular game. Why not? Oh, hey, we're facing a really strong lineup tonight. Oh, complete game shutout from Sevy. Great work. Like there are so many. Like I think with the Mets, I'm so used to like expecting bad things with them, and there have been plenty of bad things in my lifetime. I'm 34, and I've seen a lot, and it's like it can really sort of like bum you out to a certain extent. But what's fandom, right? We're here. Let's make it happen. Like I wanna believe. I think that hey, Lindor has been amazing.
Tremendous.
Pete Alonso's close. He might if he has a really good hot stretch, he might have 40 home runs again. Why not? Hey, tough games ahead. Wilder things have happened.
Wilder things have happened. Just got to enjoy the ride. There you go. That's pretty good advice, I think, for the Mets fan. We will see how it all plays out. We'll have to check in with Brian at the end of the month and see if he still feels good about it. But
if it goes badly, I have we can just have like a Mets couch where I just like lay. And
we'll do some Mets therapy.
Yes.
All right, there we go. We'll have some Mets therapy for the people. Mets therapy on the Rapid Rundown coming soon, but hopefully not too soon. We'll see. Okay, let's talk about a team that you cover. That is the New York Liberty. I'm always glad we get the Liberty here on the Rundown. Team just wrapped up a West Coast trip. They go 2-1. Mm-hmm. They have 7 games to go in the season. You know this because covering a lot of basketball. Teams always want to peak at the right time, right? Mm-hmm. Particularly if you're going on that right trajectory before the playoffs. So what do you think you need to see from the Liberty that'll let you know in the next couple of weeks that, okay, they're peaking and they're ready for the postseason? What do you need to see from them?
One thing I'm looking for with the Liberty is I need them to cut the turnovers down. Like since the All-Star break, they're second in the WNBA in turnovers, and against certain teams, like you really can't afford to do that. Like the loss they had to Connecticut a while back, turnovers bit them in the butt. The game against the Sparks, which they probably shouldn't have lost because the Sparks are the worst team in the league, turnovers bit them in the butt again. And I think when they get like that, it's because they're not moving the ball side to side. They're just sort of like relying on the first action. There's not much off-ball movement. They're just rushing. They're rushing three-point shot attempts. They're not really getting in the flow of what they do and going from paint to great, as Sandy Brondello always preaches to the team. So you know that when they're in a bad rut, it's when they're rushing shot attempts and not really doing what they normally do. And I think also the players copped to it a couple of days ago. Like there's been a bit of slippage over the past couple of games. I think that's probably a result of just like, you know, the grind of the season, you know, the game every other day is really tough competition, especially when you're at the top of the league. You're going to get everyone's best effort every single night. So there is that natural bit of slippage that comes in the dog days of a season. And I think for them, Friday night, they were really able to sort of like snap out of it and play as close to their normal game as possible. So you start to see them sort of like finding their way in a sense. And now that the team is fully healthy for the first time in a while, we can really sort of like map out what they're looking for. So turnovers is going to be the first thing I look for. The second thing that I want to see on the positive side for them is rebounding. They have been monsters on the glass post All-Star break. I think they lead the W in rebounding. They lead the league in rebounding post All-Star break, second overall on the season, second only to Chicago by only a little bit. So you see the success they've had on the boards. Last night, for example, they out-rebounded Seattle 45-17 as a team.
It's a crazy number.
Yeah, John Quell had 11 by herself. So you really sort of see the I would say they're not as big as they were last year because last year's roster had more centers, but this year the bigs are so much more versatile. Like JJ's fully healthy. Niara Sabally has really come into her own in the past couple games. Brianna Stewart is Brianna Stewart, so you know what she's about. And even other players like Kennedy Burke, Leo Fibich, they've been able to help on the glass, and you sort of see that strength and that physicality really shine as far as making sure that they complete possessions, making sure that teams don't get those second, third opportunities on offense, and really being able to set the tempo that way. So I want to see them continue dominating on the boards, really making sure that they're controlling the tempo of the game, and then with that, it allows them to be their natural selves on offense.
Yeah, to get to your first point, the turnovers have been a little concerning to me, just watching that post-Olympic break, post-All-Star break as well, too. And the rebounding, they've been so dominant. You saw how they dominated the glass, as you mentioned, against Seattle. And you can see how demoralizing that is as a team because they're always finishing possessions. Then they're hitting the glass on the offensive end. That's really demoralizing for an opponent. Now, speaking of the postseason, right, because unbelievably, it's coming up. You and I were talking about this before we started recording. Which potential first-round matchup would you like to see for the Liberty? If the playoffs started today, they would play Chicago. Is that a matchup you'd like to see? They have some size there. They have an elite rebounder in Angel Reese. What's the matchup that you'd love to see for Liberty in the first round?
I think, for me, the matchup that I think would be most advantageous for New York would be Chicago. Post All-Star break, it feels like you watch a team and it's like, okay, something's really wrong here. Like, it feels like the vibe is just completely off. Chicago, since they traded Marina Mabrey at the All-Star break, 1-6 post All-Star break. Their offensive, I want to say the offensive rating is like second to last in the league. Their 3-point percentage is like second worst in the league at, I want to say, like 30%. Only Seattle's worse at 27%. Like, it's really, everything is such a slog for them on offense to really get into their sets, move into things quickly, get those easy baskets. Kennedy Carter has been out sick the past couple of days. We hope she's okay. And then she's been out. She's really their only perimeter scorer, like the only player who can get to the basket consistently, get downhill, really create off the dribble. Chicago really doesn't have that. And with that, it allows for opposing bigs to really sort of crowd the paint even more. You know, credit to Camila Cardoso and Angel Reese that they've been able to play well, even within like the lack of spacing that's within Chicago. But at the same time, it's so hard to get to score every possession when teams know, okay, all we got to do is just like crowd the paint because we know Chicago's not going to be able to burn us from outside. We know that team is just, they don't have enough shooters. They don't have enough players who can create off the dribble. They don't have those great wing players who can really punish teams in ways that they might be able to. So it's really hard for Chicago to get into their stuff. And I think also it's not a rookie wall for coach per se, but it's tough for a first year coach. You're trying to make the playoffs. You've lost a key player in the rotation. Like they got Rachel Banham and Mariah Jefferson in exchange for Mabrey, but Marina, for whatever you can say about her, Marina can get you buckets when the time comes. Marina, she got some spunk in her. Like if it's time to get testy, Marina will get testy with the best of them, and she gives you that edge that a team needs. But it's a situation where they don't have that anymore. And then just even externally, a couple days ago, Dana Evans, their backup point guard, she initially denied that she requested a trade, but then she was like, I requested a trade. And when you have a situation where players are looking towards the exit, the team is falling apart. The struggles are really loud. And last night, a showcase game against Indiana, it was almost like a horse. It's almost like a race where it's like you're close for the first couple steps, and then gradually getting a little bit further, getting a little bit further, getting a little bit further, and then it's out of here. And then you have Caitlin Clark looking to a fan. Was that an N1? It was. And really sort of like dominating your house in a jam-packed Southern arena ready, and you just couldn't. You couldn't keep up, and it wasn't for lack of effort or lack of want to. It's just that the roster's just not there for it.
Yeah, to your point, losing Marina Mabrey has changed everything for them, and they are not necessarily the same team. And listen, they're just holding on to that 8th spot. Atlanta is right behind them, the Atlanta Dream, and that's a possible first-round opponent for the Liberty, who look like they will hold on to the top spot. So we'll see, but I do think you're right. For everything you brought up, they do match up well with Chicago, and it could be a pretty nice, I don't want to say easy sweep. I don't want to say anything's easy, but they will have home court advantage. We talked about that. That is good. We know that. So we'll see what happens with the Liberty, but postseason right around the corner for the New York Liberty. Okay. Always like to do a little bonus question, and I thought you'd be the perfect person for this because you spend a great deal of time at the Barclays Center. I see you a lot at the Barclays Center. You cover the Nets. You also cover the Liberty. So I got to ask you a question that people have been asking me. It's been coming up to me. They're like, who's got the better home crowd at the Barclays Center? Is it the Nets fan? Is it the Liberty fan? Who brings it more right now? I was about to catch myself and call it the Clays because I hated that when KD made that name. I was not a fan of that, just to be clear.
I'm actually okay with it.
No, I don't like it.
I call it the Clays sometimes in my stories.
I almost call myself. I'm not a fan of it. Okay, but if you want to call it, it's fine. You're welcome to say whatever you want in the show. But yeah, who's bringing the energy right now at, as you would say, the Clays? Yeah. Is it the Nets fan? Is it the Liberty fan? Who's got the Barclays Center rocking?
Right now, it's the Liberty fan in a clean sweep.
Clean sweep.
Yep. Like when you're there, like we've been in the arena, like it gets turned, like loud, like it feels like the energy is really massive, like every possession, and especially when Sabrina or Fabic are hitting those big threes, the crowd gets to an even higher level, and it's a situation where okay, everyone's locked in. And everyone's like pushing in a one direction. We want to see the Liberty dominate and win, and we get that more times than not. And also, I think what helps the Liberty fan is that I don't know how to sugarcoat this. I'm just gonna say it.
Here we go.
The Liberty fans have a better product to root for and watch. Like, yeah, like it's a situation where you know you're getting like elite basketball from the home team, and that as a fan you have way more energy because it doesn't feel as if, oh, I'm here, we might be close for a minute, then we're going to lose by 18 tonight. No, you're going to get a complete game, even when the Liberty lose. Like, it's not, they're completely non-competitive. They don't show up. They're just like flat and don't bring you anything. You don't get that from them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You get sustained excellence all across the board. You have amazing players and a lot of like energy. Even the game against Dallas on Thursday night, like maybe like a week and a half ago, Jalen Sherrod came in, really was a big spark plug off the bench, and that crowd went extra loud for her because she gave them even more of an energy boost, and you saw it in the crowd. Like the players have mentioned, hey, playing for a crowd like that, it gives me a little bit more juice. Like I want to win and do well anyway, but they give me just that extra bit of motivation. Like, you know, the game against Minnesota at Barclays Center in early July, it was close late. The crowd hated a particular call. They got even more amped up. Players got even more amped up, and you saw it coming down the stretch against a really amazing Minnesota team.
Yeah.
So the crowd, it almost feels like it's like 12th man adjacent, like in football, where you have like those home crowds who are really so good. They give you that extra advantage, and I feel like the Liberty fans do that. And just in thinking a little bit more about the Net fan Liberty fan dynamic, we might have talked about it last year, but you remember it really well, the game when the Knicks fans were in Barclays Center, the first matchup, and then I think Mikal Bridges had 30 points that night, but then the Knicks, Julius Randle took over late, Knicks won, and they asked him about it in postgame. He's like, it doesn't feel fun when my home arena gets taken over, and I think I might have said at the time, but he's been in the building when the Liberty fans are there. We've been in there plenty of times.
Right.
You never get that. Like even when Caitlin Clark was here, you didn't get that. It's not and when Angel Reese was here, you didn't get that where the opposing superstar or the opposing team took over your arena.
That's a really, really good point, because you're right. And I was there for both these games where Caitlin Clark, for the home opener this year, and then Angel Reese being there. Yes, there were a lot of people out there. Just let people know, a lot of people with Caitlin Clark jerseys, a lot of people with Angel Reese jerseys, and it's dope for the game. We like to see that and everything. But, yeah, the Liberty fans let it be known, and they were still strong. And as you and I have been to a lot of Liberty games, for people who have not, please come out and experience that energy, because it is fun. I agree with your answer. We love you Nets fans too, obviously, but Liberty, they're just bringing it right now.
Yeah, they're bringing it, and also Ellie is an adventure. I've had occasion to hang out around Ellie sometimes, or like in certain events. Like Ellie just has like a magnetism to her, and you feel it. Like I've been like in press row, like I'm sitting where I'm at, and then the fans right above her start screaming for Ellie, Ellie. And I'm like, that's so adorable.
People go crazy for Ellie. My daughter, I took her to a game last year on West Indian night, went crazy for Ellie. She got a picture with Ellie, so shout out to Ellie for being so kind to take the picture. But yeah, kids love Ellie. Everybody loves Ellie. Well, except for one person I know who actually doesn't like Ellie. There's actually a person I know who does. There's a person I know who does not like Ellie, but I'll get into that at a later time. It's weird. But yes, it's a great experience at Liberty. I think it's going to be fun down the stretch. We'll be talking more about the Liberty, you and I, for sure. Liberty have an excellent chance to win it all. We'll see if that could happen. But that does it for this edition of the New York Sports Rapid Rundown. That is my guy, Brian Fleurantin, the great writer covering the Nets and the Liberty. And he went to, just happened to go to the best high school in the world. That is Clara Barton High School right there. Fellow Brooklynites. When Brooklyn is in the building on the show, it's always good. Brian, I appreciate you joining me. You've been with me on the New York Got Game basketball show. You've hopped on me with a lot of stuff. Glad to have you on the Rapid Rundown.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to doing it again in the future.
Yeah, definitely coming in the future. And hopefully, the next time you're here in the future, you don't have to exhale as hard about the Mets. That's what I'm hoping for you. I'm wishing you the best, that you don't have to exhale as hard about the Mets. We'll see how all that goes. Again, check out the work of Brian Fleurantin. I'm Dexter Henry, and we will see you guys next time in September on the next edition of the New York Sports Rapid Rundown.